Yeah, so I'm pretty sure they just revealed who the remains of the third descender officially is, who the second who came is, and pretty much just lore dropped the context of the first war between the dragons and the Primordial One. Like, this is crazy and nobody's talking about it. So I'm pretty sure Hoyoverse watches some of my videos because a lot of my recent Genshin videos talk about the bigger picture and the greater timeline of Teyvat. And they go and drop some of the biggest lore bombs we've had in a while, and getting just more perspective on the war with the dragons. That is something we have always lacked. So I'm not only going to be recapping the main world quest in 5.5 with the dragon and their old city and civilization, but also some crazy lore we just got with the new artifact sets. Really, at this point they should just make an anime. Oh right, they are supposed to. Where the hell is that? Now, if you've watched any of my recent videos, I've talked about potential origin of the Abyss, I've talked about the history between the Heavenly Principles and humanity, the origin and timeline of Teyvat. But let's start with the artifact set because I thought this was absolutely insane. What it's referring to is an ancient being that is not from Teyvat, a descender from a faraway world. A being that is potentially billions of years old, that is able to see things from across the universe. But according to this artifact set, their meditation was broken by the radiance of this very small planet in the corner of the galaxy, this being Teyvat. Fascinated by the powers emitted by the dragons, obviously, because we know they were the only inhabitants at this time. There was no Primordial One yet. According to the artifact set, that this ancient being knows the fate and future of all planets, and when they came to Teyvat to visit, they made friends with the dragons and the Dragon King, Nibelung. And just from the artifact set itself, it sounded like Nibelung was a pretty chill dude. This faraway visitor then warns the dragons to abandon everything and everyone, for in the bigger picture they are insignificant and will be wiped out. Now, I will include how the 5.5 World Quest pertains to this artifact set lore, but right off the bat we know there's no Primordial One in Teyvat yet, but the dragons are heavily advanced. The dragons and Teyvat being from the Light Realm, Phlogiston being a primary source of energy and power, the dragons having very advanced civilization, culture, and technology already, with the capabilities of already exploring outside Teyvat. So this Outlander offered Nibelung and his race to join them, rather than be annihilated. But the Dragon King then thanked his new friend, but then stated that those insignificant beings were actually the reason for his existence, referring to the dragons, and Nibelung would rather perish alongside his race than abandon him. I've even made a video on this channel talking about the origins of the dragons in Teyvat, where they even come from, because even they have to come from somewhere. And honestly, the more we learn about the dragons of Teyvat, the more I think this video holds true, and connects to the other Hoyoverse games. But regardless, something very interesting is that the Dragon King states, if he does die, his corpse will hold the world together to avoid the destruction, acting as a dam, and promised that he would lead all life to the stars. So this Outlander heard this and left, leaving the dragons in peace. Now this whole line about Nibelung, his bones then holding the realm together and protecting it, shielding it, something I've been saying for over a year. That Nibelung is the third descender, when he eventually returned to Teyvat to ignite the war of vengeance in the heavens. His remains are the Gnosis, which represent the elemental authority of Teyvat, something that is very heavily responsible for our current game, vision holders, and to help combat the Abyss. I have a whole video I'm working on that exact topic when it comes to visions, how they are obtained, but that's what I think of right away. And this mysterious Outlander that visited Teyvat I believe to be the second who came, which honestly makes it kind of funny and ironic because they are called the second descender even though they might have came to Teyvat before the Primordial One did. But when this mysterious Outlander returned, everything had changed. The dragons were replaced with beings with wings, referring to the angels, the Seelies, and the Four Shades. Celestia was established, and there was no longer a light realm but a human realm, and Teyvat catered to humanity. The dragons were defeated and now in hiding, and like the Men of Lithan book states, a toxic environment, which refers to the dragons not being compatible with the human realm and having to adapt. Human forms, human bodies, more mechanical advancements, and even during the quest in 5.2 Natlan, the dragon sage stating that it was willing to show humanity the power of the elements. And something we learned in Natlan from the Lord of Night is that the elements themselves all stem from the light realm, or the imaginary, branching into 7 colors. So from the time that this mysterious outlander from across the universe warned Nibelung, left and came back, in that time period the Primordial One came and conquered Teyvat and defeated the dragons, created Celestia and the angels in the Forest Shades, and Nibelung left. Maybe Nibelung left to go find his friend that tried to warn him, gather help. And we knew that dragons were advanced enough that they could leave Teyvat and explore the outside worlds. And when this mysterious outlander returned, this mysterious outlander did not want to talk with the new ruler of Teyvat, aka the Primordial One. The Golden City was going to be punished by the heavens for questioning their authority. This is a topic we've talked a lot about on this channel. Even the original human civilizations, the OG humans of Teyvat after the Primordial One came, eventually started to question who they are, what they are, and why they're here, why they take commands, and why they listen to the heavenly principles, which started to slowly anger the Primordial One. Generations of benevolency, and humans prospering eventually, humans' curiosity started to grow and started to question things, which makes the original humans and dragons have a lot in common. Teyvat started to feel more like a prison than a world to live on. Whether it's for their own protection from the abyss and the external threats, which are all pretty valid, is irrelevant because that is how people felt. This mysterious outlander debated why. Should a country be punished for asking questions? Why should anyone for that matter? This mysterious outlander then took the mortal form of a boy, and eventually met with an angel under a silver tree. Which was an angel of Celestia. He revealed secrets to her that no mortal is supposed to know, meaning that this outlander was obviously something more than just a mere mortal. Remember, the angels and the Seelies, the Shades, were all created by the Primordial One when they got to Teyvat. So to them, they are native to Teyvat, and all they know is to cater to humanity. Like Renova says in Natlan, it's cumbersome work, but that is the way of the angel. The angel started to question how did he know all of this. The man revealed himself to her and told her all the secrets and knowledge he possessed. He sang beautiful songs to her, revealing the tales of the grand cosmos. And this angel, for the first time in her life, felt love. Not just commands by her master, but felt like a person. And this angel would then go on to spill the secrets of the heavens, secret taboos, without hesitation. Again, something else we've talked a lot about on this channel. The angels being banished without their physical forms to roam the lands, in punishment. And I've even talked a lot about how different angels fell in love with humans. This was strictly forbidden by the heavenly principles under their rule, to keep civilization and humanity in the dark, preventing civilization from advancing too far, to avoid the very catastrophes that were yet to come. The Outlander then decided to create a country that will reach higher than the throne of the heavens, and this is how the very first angel of Celestia betrayed her master, the Primordial One, for the love of her life, this Outlander. And the Outlander, upon knowing of this betrayal, cursed all the angels that should they ever love one person instead of all of humanity, they will lose their divinity and self. And it's left ambiguous what happens after that, but I don't think it's hard to fill in the blanks. What happened after that is the Second War of the Heavens, and the curse of losing their divinity and self is what we see the Seelies roaming around as lifeless husk, and why the Shades are kind of in hiding in Teyvat. But with the ultimate goal still, like they were created to do, is guide humanity. To put it in a simplified timeline, the Outlander meets with Nibelung. The Primordial One then defeats Nibelung after the Outlander left. Nibelung then leaves in defeat, gathering forbidden knowledge from outside Teyvat, but also simultaneously gets corrupted by the Abyss. When the Outlander returns, Nibelung is nowhere to be found, no longer being the light realm but human realm in the elements. The Outlander falls in love with an angel and decides to fight the heavenly principles, or the Primordial One, and like Nouvelette's voice lines already suggest, the Primordial One and the Second Who Came fought, but then they had to cease their fighting and team up to fight a third threat. The Outlander, which I believe to be the Second Who Came, fights in the honor of the Seelie that he loved. Fights the Primordial One, also spreading forbidden knowledge. And this is where the Second War of the Heavens breaks out. But then Nibelung returns corrupted by forbidden knowledge, and is unsalvageable. We do get more context to Nibelung's corruption and how it affected the dragons in the new world quest in the volcano. And this is what I think resulted in the Second Who Came and the Primordial One having to actually team up to fight Nibelung then. They are forced to slay the corrupted dragon, and we all know what the Abyss does to individuals. It makes them go mad. The Pyro Sovereign Shukato was yet to follow, and they use the remains of the slain dragon king. The king of all the dragons, even the sovereigns, and the dragons being the original elemental power of Teyvat, from the light realm where the elements come from. Hence the Gnosis being created from his remains. What did Nibelung say? Originally when he met with his friend, the Outlander, his bones would safeguard the realm after his demise. And again, I'm going to explore this topic in great detail in an upcoming video, but the Gnosis are the backbone of what makes up the current Teyvat, the new regime and system, the new world order. Once the heavenly principles was injured by the Great War in the heavens, having to cast the divine nails, mend the land of the corruption, the war, the old civilizations now eradicated, along with most of the dragons in their civilization now, the new humans came about. And this is where the 7 Archons come into play, Celestia inciting the Archon War, and 7 victors would claim a Gnosis and the elemental authority, and this is how visions even come into play. There was no vision holders before this point. Vision holders are essentially to help combat the external threats in the Abyss. It's the new system, all connected through fate, Irminsul, and the false sky, the constellations. So Nibelung actually keeping his promise. Vision holders gain a fraction of the power of the elemental authority, the Archons, with their Gnosis. And honestly, I still believe it's his remains. His corpse protecting the land like he promised. Just makes the most sense to me, which makes it even crazier that the Fatui Harbingers are collecting them, along with the fragments of the moon, and that this mysterious Outlander that came to Teyvat long ago to meet with his friend the dragon, and his civilization to warn them, is actually the second who came. Now what this does for me is just further prove what I've been saying all this time. The angels were equally in the dark along with the original humans and the dragons, being ruled over by the Primordial One who conquered Teyvat. The Primordial One did not conquer Teyvat to kill everyone. It was not a conquest, but more for survival. Clearly, they came from somewhere, where the Abyss was also a threat. We know in Honkai Star Rail, the Abyss and the Black Tide, it's all the same thing. The Abyss is even referred to as the Black Tide in Natlan too. There are a lot of really good reasons to justify why the Primordial One came to Teyvat, obviously. But what happened to the second who came in the Primordial One? What are they doing right now? Well, that we don't know. But what we do know is that, more than likely, the nation of Khaenri'ah was the dragon's legacy. Already hinted at by the Dragon Sage, the fact that the dragons had incredible technologies, and the fact that everything about Khaenri'ah has a lot of dragon references, like King Ermin, Rhindaughter, who tried to create clones of descenders, like Durin or even Albedo. Albedo could very well be Rhindaughter's attempt to recreate this mysterious Outlander, and Durin, an attempt to recreate the Dragon King, using the art of Khemia, which is a forbidden art and science from outside Teyvat, along with the ruined technology. Now something else we just learned in 5.5 with this new dragon civilization is that they did also have connections with the moons, and guess who else did? Khaenri'ah, with their Crimson Moon and Eclipse dynasties, being able to harness powers from outside Teyvat and defy the world, its fate. Like they state, a nation that can even rise above Celestia and the heavens, overthrow them. This mysterious Outlander being able to create a country that will reach higher than the throne of the heavens. And Khaenri'ah's whole identity was to find descenders that can defy this world, which brings us to the Travelers. Khaenri'ah is the one that summoned the Travelers here, and we have the most ties to Khaenri'ah above all else. Khaenri'ah summoning descenders and then eventually us, in a lot of ways is a parallel to many years ago, Nibelung trying to find outside help from Teyvat after being usurped, potentially even looking for help from his old friend and visitor, the second who came, but got so badly corrupted that he had to be put out of his misery, but his remains, now the Gnosis, still able to protect the land. Now basically the 5.5 Natlan quest focuses mostly on the dragon race themselves and their ancient city. I think it's also pretty interesting that clearly the Primordial One and Celestia stole many things from the dragons. Their elemental authority, which make up visions now. And if you look at the false sky and how it works, basically Teyvat is like a bubble prison, but look at this dragon civilization within the volcano. You can even see that the sky is shattered there too. I really wonder if the Primordial One stole that technology to create a bubble world with a false sky. Being able to have a sky with clouds and atmosphere, wind, nature, trees, etc., all growing and thriving within that bubble. So maybe just using the elements isn't the only thing that Celestia stole. Now, the actual quest within the volcano itself goes hand in hand with this new artifact lore, and piggybacks off of the Natlan lore, with Khan and the Dragon Sage. This guy is the same Dragon Sage. We just learn his real name, Xbalanque. Hopefully I'm not butchering that, but he is the same person, and it appears all along he's been guiding us in Little One on this path, and him hinting towards Little One ultimately having the potential to become the next Dragon Sovereign, which I totally called, by the way. So I'm going to recap that quest, but before I do that, I'm going to quickly recap Khan and how this all ties in together. Because if you recall in Natlan, we learned that Khan was the king tyrant in Natlan who ruled over Natlan during the era of the Grand Alliance, was friends with Xbalanque, who would become the first Pyro Archon, but later split his mind and body into two. And he was the son of Xbalanque, who in that quest was named something different. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that, to be honest with you. But Khan was a dragon mixed with human soul, who bore the Flame Lord's blessing, similar to Little One who bears that blessing. Essentially, the Dragon Sage saw the downfall inevitability of their Dragon Pyro Sovereign after they had their false or faked death, and wanted to save the dragon race. So he looked into humanity, and that's how he nurtured his son to be a half-dragon mixed with human. And he hoped that one day his half-breed son would slay the old Pyro Sovereign and become the new sovereign. But Khan was raised by humans in his youth with the tribes, and at some point he became a prisoner of the dragons. Xbalanque, who had yet to ascend to Pyro Archonhood at the time, showed him great compassion. So Khan devoted himself to serving him and humanity after his imprisonment. Now, for the 5.5 story quest, let's recap what actually happened. Basically, Xbalanque, the Pyro Sovereign, created a weapon of mass destruction, using phlogiston kinda like that trap room we had to do through the quest. It's like that game we played as a kid, the floor is lava, don't touch it. Basically, it would have been like this on a mass scale in Natlan, so as soon as the abyss appeared, it would eradicate it, but also kill everyone else in the process, and only beings that could become pure phlogiston, like the sage says, would survive. Not those pesky humans though, am I right? But in order for it to be activated, it required a great eye of the dragon, which the dragon sage hinted towards. He never had a weakness, until he gave up its eye. And Xbalanque would use this weakness to slay the Pyro Sovereign and become the first Pyro Archon. The Dragon Sage himself was born from the Pyro Sovereign, but then we get some context of what happened after the Great War. Once the Primordial One defeated the dragons and conquered Teyvat, the Pyro Sovereign was frozen into lava, but when they awoke, Natlan had changed greatly. We also learn in this quest that they had a sky ship that was supposed to become an anchor to the moons, connected by a sky cable. The plan did not come to fruition or be completed, but it would have been the highest point of the game, and it was supposed to even be higher than the false sky originally. Khan would later modify it, the moons being something heavily linked towards the fate of this world and defying it. Hence why the dragons, Khaenri'ah, and now the Fatui Harbingers and Nodcry all take an interest with the moons in harnessing that power. It then states that Nibelung descended to the world with his fight with the Primordial One in the Second Great War, or the Second War of the Heavens, the War of Vengeance. Like we just talked about, and like I speculate, the second who came, along with the Primordial One, had no choice but to slay Nibelung and turn its body and remains into the Gnosis. The dragons also had a means and plans to leave Teyvat in search of other worlds, along with reconstructing the moons. That is where the astral assemblages come into play, and are means for lunar reconstruction. They refer to the Primordial One as the Reaver beyond the sky, and we learn that Xbalanque made prototype constructs that use very advanced technology and AI systems. Now, to put everything we just learned in order, the dragons ruled Teyvat, along with their dragon king. Mysterious Outlander comes from beyond the stars to Teyvat, somebody that's billions of years old, and can see the downfall of your planet before it even happens, and was able to sense the essence of Teyvat from far away. Nibelung states that he will stay with his kind despite the warnings. So the Outlander leaves. The Primordial One comes and defeats Nibelung. When the dragons are defeated, Celestia created, the human realm created. Along with humanity and the angels, Nibelung leaves. The mysterious Outlander returns to find his dragon friend now gone, and Teyvat is more like a prison, has changed so much. Knowledge is forbidden and there's divine punishments, even for the angels, new winged beings that roam the skies and the heavens. Meets with an angel to learn these secrets of this forbidden world and also share his secrets and his true self. They fall in love, and then they challenge the heavenly principles. Also, there's a lot of talk of humanity eventually reaching the clouds, living alongside the gods in Celestia, which I think they're referring to the Spiral Abyss, because this artifact set does talk a lot about Skirk as well. Clearly, because the artifact set actually looks like it's her set and it's a cryo-buffing set. We'll talk more about that in a second. While the first and second Descender are fighting, Nibelung returns, but returns with forbidden knowledge, joining the fight between the Primordial One and the second who came, them realizing that they have to team up to defeat Nibelung, slaying the great dragon king. The Outlander then fulfilled Nibelung's wish that he shared with him long ago, that his bones can protect the land, safeguard the realm, hence the Gnosis and the 7 elemental powers and authority of Teyvat. The Pyro Sovereign Xuchotl, along with all of the other sovereigns like we learned with Apep, were waiting for their king's return to reignite the war against the usurpers. Xuchotl is slain by Xbalanque and also corrupted by the Abyss. Xuchotl was hoping for Nibelung's return before he was slain, and Little One got sentience through the primordial flame by the Sage. And the Sage is essentially what cultivated Little One to begin with, a dragon that has the potential to become the next Pyro Sovereign in the current era. The Abyss itself is what woke up Xbalanque from his false death, his slumber, placed there by the Primordial One after the war. And the fact that they refer to Nibelung as the Great Black-Winged Lord, annihilated by the Raiders of the Sky, just again reinforces the idea that Nibelung is the third Descender. Xuchotl himself becoming a breeding ground for darkness, periods of clarity growing ever shorter. He didn't know when he would lose his senses and give in to the twisted nothingness, truly succumb to the Abyss, which we know he eventually did and burned the ley lines. But one thing he did actually before losing himself to the Abyss is used the last of his wisdom to renovate the Dragon City and create the Astral Embridges and create the Doomsday device. All the while we learn that the Dragon Sage had plans for his half-breed son to take up the mantle of Pyro Sovereign, but that obviously didn't go as planned. This whole idea of dragons adapting as well is something heavily hinted towards in the Men of Lithon book, which we covered recently, because the dragons and honestly Phlogiston itself seems to be from the Light Realm, referring to the new humans taking inhabitants in their lands. And that is essentially the new quest in a nutshell. Putting the new artifact lore along with this new quest together really fills in a lot of the blanks and paints a picture on the past conflicts and what actually happened. And this line by the Sage also just reinforces that connection with Khaenri'ah. He refers to how we lean on the authority of their so-called Archon like a crutch, unable to forge weapons for themselves, to wield, to defend themselves if the world might need it for the all-corrupting dark. Also reinforcing that connection with Khaenri'ah as a nation that rebelled and was able to forge immaculate weapons like the giant ruin mechs, the art of Chemia, having some of the most exceptional science, technology, and beings to ever grace Teyvat. But because humans are supposed to be left in the dark, not know of these forbidden secrets, they are essentially helpless relying on their archons, and that is exactly what the Heavenly Principles wants. To avoid drawing the Abyss here in the first place. If humans can live happy, humble, quiet lives, everything would just be fine. But no, like in our own real world, humans always must ask the big questions, rather than leave well enough alone. So for the dragons to help cultivate Khaenri'ah just makes sense. And just re-listen to these lines from Pierro himself in the Fatui trailer. We assume that he was talking about the sages of Sumeru, because this trailer dropped right before Sumeru. But listen to it again and it makes more sense.
The sages think themselves to be all-knowing, but we alone are wise to the virtue in those acts of folly. In this war, not even a single pawn may be spared. Because on this chessboard, checkmate is not where the game ends. Promise you, your final resting place will be the entirety of the old world.
Obviously, we saw how easily this dragon sage could shapeshift. He fooled us multiple times in Natlan so far. Maybe Pierro's referring to the old dragon sages. All this talk of checkmate is not where the game ends. This could be referring to the ultimate goal of the dragons all along, explore beyond Teyvat and in the stars, which we now know they made technology to do this. Conquering and overthrowing Celestia, this regime, the heavenly principles, isn't the endgame. Nibelung even stated to his Outlander friend before he left Teyvat and the Primordial One came. He wanted to lead his people into the stars. To me, that makes the most sense. When this is all over, it'll be the entirety of the old world, the original Teyvat, with the dragons, the Light Realm perhaps. And honestly, this just even reinforces what I've been saying for so long now. There's no freaking way that the rooster is not a dragon. I mean, come on, even looks reptilian. And his codename's the Rooster, Dragon's Roost. Okay, maybe I've used that joke too many times now, but you gotta admit, in my opinion, the rooster is to the Tsaritsa what Dvalin is to Venti. Just saying. But there is massive connections here, and we honestly don't even know who is actually a dragon when it comes to Khaenri'ahs and the Fatui. Dragons had to adapt to the human realm and go into hiding. For all we know, Pierro himself could be a dragon, and many others, we don't know. Also, as a little side note, we did get a little bit of Ahau lore in this quest. He really wasn't kidding when he said he was a dragon lord. There were 13 dragon lords in Natlan, and they all served the Pyro Sovereign. There's a little Easter egg you can find within the quest. They often used something called the Chamber of Deliberation to make important decisions. The Pyro Sovereign was often asleep due to the abyssal corruption. Ahau was the 10th lord of the 13. And he was belittled by his followers because he got himself bested by a mere human and sealed in the mountain. So they often said he deserved to be sealed and perish because he couldn't even defeat a weak human. Something the sage mentioned back in 5.2. Humans are weak, and dragons are proud, powerful race. So being defeated by a human was a shame. And that's why Ahau has a chip on his shoulder. I just think it's funny and gives more context to even the Dragon Lord Ahau. Something you could easily miss in this quest, but don't worry, I got you. Now, some important topics of discussion before we wrap the video up. Why did the Primordial One do all this? Are they the bad guy? No. We know that Genshin Impact, along with other Hoyoverse games, isn't so black and white, good or bad. The Primordial One is doing what they feel is necessary. In reality, can you blame them? Can we humans be trusted with all of this knowledge and be trusted to do the right thing for the betterment and survival of everyone? Can you imagine if the Abyss was a real thing? We would eat each other alive. The Abyss corrupts people. People would be turning on each other without even being corrupted. So yeah, I can understand why there are such strict rules and punishment and everyone must be kept in the dark. We also know through the other Hoyoverse games that there are a lot of greater threats than most people in Teyvat even can fathom. The Eons, Emanators, the Abyss is obviously one of them, and then there's the Honkai, which is the most threatening thing within the entire Hoyoverse multiverse. And the Honkai actually acts as a giant multiversal purging system for the most advanced civilization. Once you advance to a certain point, it comes in the form of many things, monsters, disease, catastrophes, to wipe out advanced civilization and make it start fresh. A purging system for the universe. So for a being to hide in this bubble world, sensing the technology of the dragons to help harness that along with their bubble world technology to hide from it, makes sense. And why humans that advance too far or dabble with forbidden knowledge and outworldly technologies, like Khaenri'ah, the dragon race, must be taken down a peg, and why Teyvat always seems to be in a more medieval primitive state, but is littered and scattered throughout the land with all these really advanced, lost technologies. And finally, this artifact set does talk a lot about a girl and her master's guidance, this girl that ventured northward, traversing the freezing wastelands to a corridor of fractured mirrors at the edge of the frozen sea. After slaying countless monsters that wandered the ruins, finally among the abyssal remnants, she caught a glimpse of the treasure concealed beneath the drifting snow. Like I already said in the video, I think they're referring to the Spiral Abyss, and she was able to uncover some secrets of a young youth who ended up being this mysterious Outlander long ago, along with the first angel. And their talks of building a city to the sky, to the heavens, which pretty much sums up the Spiral Abyss perfectly. It was the original work of a voyager who traversed the cosmos that made a vow with the Lord of Dragons and then fell in love with an angel. Discovering an era now lost to memory, having spun fallen frost moonlight into flawless flesh and blood, they clad it to the forms once frail and weak. Such authority to create was once the Lord of the Firmament divine, yet it was handed to the mortals by the rebellious envoy, who dreamed that one day, these little creatures might create a perfect being that could merge with the world. Now naturally, I think this is the tale of Skirk and her master Sir Talugi, the young girl in the description of the artifact set, again, a cryo-based artifact set that we know Skirk's going to be playable soon, discovered in this frozen wasteland. Remember that the Spiral Abyss was on top of a frozen peak, in a frozen wasteland that was Mondstadt. Mondstadt actually was a frozen wasteland before Venti became the Archon, and blew away all the snow with his animal power. And this young girl, being the apprentice of a magical swordsman, capable of traversing the abyss, sounds a lot like Sir Talugi to me. And if you think about how we met Skirk and how she revealed the remains of the third Descender, all of the artifact set lore we just talked about makes so much sense, and why she would know all of these secrets. This might actually be a big part in how Khaenri'ah even gained some of their technology and learned about the Frost Moon to begin with. And since we're going to be going to Nodcry pretty soon, and Skirk's going to be playable very soon, all of this lore makes total sense, and why Genshin Impact has decided to put more perspective on the past conflicts, the Descenders and their origins, more context on the lore of the Descenders, and the reason being is because now we are going to Nodcry and Shazniah. That is what's next for us, and what we'll be focusing on then when we get there is the future, where this is all headed, the endgame of Teyvat and its story, along with the Travelers. I plan to speculate more on all this lore because I can't believe they dropped so much of it. Like, even this mysterious Outlander who could potentially be the second who came, could very well be maybe an emanator from Honkai Star Rail, having powers to see destruction before it happens. Perfectly fit the finality in what emanators of that path are capable of. But that's gonna pretty well wrap up this video, as I feel I've rambled and wasted enough of your time already. I also have a video going over the lore of visions, what they mean, the context behind them, the history behind them, where they come from, why they exist in the first place, as well as why it's not random that certain characters get a certain vision due to certain circumstances. I want to break that all down in its own video, so stay tuned for that. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know your thoughts on all this new lore in 5.5. What you make of it. Personally, I feel like it just kind of contributes to a lot of the recent videos I've had, which honestly, one of my favorite parts about Genshin Impact is the intriguing overarching story and lore of the universe here. How Teyvat as a world with its alien technologies, why it's so isolated, interconnects with the other games potentially. Or just other unknown worlds out there. Maybe this mysterious Outlander who came to Teyvat to originally meet with Nibelung is related to the Travelers. Maybe there's something there. Maybe they're from the same world that we are, which is why Khaenri'ah later on summoned our help. But I think this, for me at least, almost nearly confirms that the second Descender is this mysterious Outlander, and that Nibelung is the third Descender, with his remains being the Gnosis. Especially with that line that his corpse will help protect the world long after he's gone and he's willing to die with his race. But again, let me know your thoughts in the comments, like and subscribe if you'd like to see more content like this, and as always, we will see you all in the next one. Later.